Joseph Bertrand.
Good evening. My name is Joseph Bertrand. I'm the chairman of the Permanent Building Committee, and tonight this is the 8th Community Public Forum regarding the new Wakefield Memorial High School. Tonight, you will hear from the architects SMMA on the developments in the design of the new school, not only in the building itself but also the site. You will also hear from Lynn Stapleton of Left Field on the eligible costs having to do with the MSBA and any reimbursement that the town gets from the MSBA. So I turn the meeting over, and if you, at the end, there are chats. If you have questions, and questions can be made through the Zoom. Lynn?
Thank you, Joe. Welcome, everybody. Tonight we have a small group of our project team here tonight, and we'll start with introductions. From the school district, we have
Tim O'Brien, Director of Facilities.
Doug Lyons, Superintendent of Schools.
Tim Baker, Project Manager with Left Field.
and myself, Lynn Stapleton from Left Field, and then our group of SMMA, plus we have one online, Helen Fantini. Go ahead.
I'm Brian Black, architect with SMMA.
Megan Collins, landscape architect with SMMA.
Erin Prostilio, civil engineer with SMMA.
Alan DeHaan, project architect with SMMA.
With that, I'll turn it over to, I think Megan's going to be the first one speaking tonight. And as Joe said, we're going to be going through the developments in the design. And this is the design that we'll be presenting in the schematic design submission that's going to MSBA at the end of October.
So I'm going to actually start
Oh,
tonight.
sorry.
That's okay. So what you see before you is your proposed site plan. I'm not going to rehash all of the studies that were completed in feasibility, but at the end of that study, we found that the preferred location of the new school building is on the existing site of the Beasley Oval. So that means phase construction. So that is the first phase, building the new school. The second phase, when the new school is open, is to abate, demolish, and build a new Beasley Oval. We are providing for a slightly expanded parking on the site, and also expanding some parking up at Landrigan Field and across Hemlock Road. And then another off-site improvement will be realigning Hemlock Road to provide a safer and more accessible intersection at Farm Street and Hemlock Road. So that's part of the project as well. Vehicular circulation, the school is accessed both via Hemlock, via one-way, and also a two-way curb cut on Farm Street. We're providing dedicated parking and van places for arrival and dismissal. Again, the parking lot is concentrated in the north of the site. That was preferred based on our conversations with the district. So most of that parking is concentrated on the north side of the site. We are providing, like I said, a new Beasley Oval, track and field, similar to what you have today. And a lot of other much more exciting spaces other than parking, which Megan is going to talk about tonight.
Okay, go to the next one. Thank you. So here we're looking at our arrival sequence. We have a one-way driveway entering from Hemlock. Cars and buses would enter here and drop off before and after the plaza. We have a pedestrian plaza that crosses between the school and Beasley Oval. And this will be a raised crossing to really accentuate the pedestrian connection between the school and Beasley Oval. You can see on the left side that we also have a dedicated area for buses and vans to drop off and be separate from cars for pickup and delivery. Can you go to the next slide? Here we're looking at the main pedestrian connection. You can see that it's a raised crossing, that there are social, academic, and and community spaces on both sides of the road. There are spaces with benches that are less formal on the school side, and there is a more formal tiered seating on the Beasley Oval side of the street. You can go to the next slide. You can see here a little bit better the more formal area that can be used for community events or instruction during the school day. And then on the other side of the driveway, you can see some of the social spaces that have been carved out of the landscape along the entry drive. There's a walkway there that will bring people from Hemlock to the school, and from the school out to the remainder of the campus across Hemlock up to Landrigan and to Dobbins and to the baseball field as well. Can go to the next slide, please. This is the Academic Commons, which is located on the south side of the school. You can see that we have several spaces that we'll be creating in this area. We will be using the grade change to create a much more formal instructional space between a much more open and flexible space that is in the foreground of the image. These two spaces are the largest spaces, and there are some other smaller spaces that could be used for small group instruction or teacher planning or other just social times while people are on the campus to enjoy recreation or go to a football game. I also want to point out that there is an accessible pathway between this area up to Landrigan, up to Hemlock, and then across to Landrigan. You can sort of see it in the back, but it'll be worked into the grade change so that this becomes a really main pedestrian connection between the two areas. And then the last image is the Central Commons, which is located between the just outside of the dining commons. And so we see this as a much more flexible space that's used for student dining, faculty dining, that could be used for art classrooms, instructional space. There could be pre or post event programming out in this area. We see it as a really flexible space to be used by the community and by the school community as well. And now I'll pass it back to Brian so that he can tell you about the school itself.
Right, so I'll talk about the design of the building, not only the exterior architecture, but also a little bit of the interior that we've started. Our team has started investigations of what the interior design of the school will be also. I like to return to this diagram as kind of the touchstone of the project because it encapsulates a lot of what we're trying to achieve in a simple arrangement of 4 academic clusters, and that comes directly from the educational program, which is a voluminous document that really spells out where the district is going in terms of the delivery of education. And so it's really the piece that we are always testing ourselves against in terms of developing the plan. Schematic design is a very plan-centric phase. It's one when we pass over to Lynn in a little bit, we'll be hearing about how we're going to establish a budget. There's some cost estimating going on. But really, truly, this phase is about setting the concept for the school that's going to be the threshold to a new sort of opportunity for the district in terms of that delivery. So again, the diagram is really something that we think needs to be strong from the beginning. This came out of the visioning process with the community, with a lot of stakeholders. And so, I hope that the essence of that diagram comes through as we start to look at the plan. This is a building on 3 levels. It's 260,000 square feet, give or take a few. So it's a quite large school. The length of it from left to right is roughly equal to the current school. And what we heard from the very beginning, was a fundamental issue of the way that the existing high school was built was not sort of purpose-built. It's got a large courtyard in the middle. It has add-ons on the end, so the gym is on one end, the theater's on the other, and classrooms are not placed really where you would want them. So we started at the very beginning to structure the school such that the academics, which you see in the sort of L-shaped figure on the left, are on the southern half of the school, north. The arrow here pointing sort of up to the right. And that is where, a majority of the sort of academic life of the school will take place. So when we heard about, the zigzagging or difficulty getting from point A to point B, we feel that what we've given here is really a structure that can help really organize the school day, and it can make it, quite efficient in terms of sharing of resources. And fundamentally, it needs to be easy to navigate. So those are some of the guiding principles here. In terms of how it works, the main entry is here. You saw in some of the imagery the volume up above here, which has a serrated sort of edge. That signifies where you're going to and getting dropped off. And I think we've worked pretty carefully about identifying that. And then the main entry is through a secure vestibule. There's check-in at admin, which is in the sort of light tan colored area. This is the main admin for the building. The principal's office is here, meeting rooms. The nurse's suite is right next to it. The assistant principals are also now back here. We had looked at potentially moving them up to level 2. So, this is really kind of the command center of the school. It's front and center, and it has eyes on the front of the school in terms of monitoring all the business that goes on there. When you come in, immediately you're into that heart of the school that was in the diagram. It is sort of a slice through the building that is meant to be very open and giving a sense of transparency. It's a space that will be used all throughout the day, not only as a cafeteria for serving lunches and other meals. It can be a pre-function space for activities, and it's also the entree into, directly down here, the auditorium for performances. And if we go up this center element, which is a stairwell with a bit of an amphitheater piece built onto it, we call it a learning stair. That gets you up to level 2 where the gym is located. To the right in the blue, phys ed and wellness, sort of health and wellness, and also some athletic elements. The auxiliary gym is being replicated from the existing school here on the end. We've been laying out sort of the mat sizes and everything there. It's meant to be a multi-purpose space. There's also a weight room, and there is a flat floor multi-purpose room that can be used for dance, yoga, wrestling, and other things. The purple space down below is signifying the arts, and more specifically around the auditorium, performing arts, with music suite at the sort of back of house corridor. And then there's a service corridor that leads from the kitchen, which is in the center, with the servery serving directly to the cafeteria. Out the back is access to the loading dock, which is on the very north end of the building. It is somewhat shielded from the neighborhood by the volume of the school. Behind it is the relocated WCAT studio, and behind it is the district office suite. Tracking back to the academic side, there's a primary corridor driving all the way through. And then there are a series of loops that happen with the core academics on the perimeter, with career, vocational, and technical space at the center, acting as mini hubs, if you will, so that the interdisciplinary adjacencies that we've been striving for are really kind of taking shape here. Sciences are sort of on the inner layer, facing that outer courtyard area, academic commons that Megan was talking about a little bit earlier. As we go up to level 2, there's still really a ton of activity. On these projects, there's such competition to have things be on the ground floor. With a constrained site, some of it has migrated up. So the gymnasium is on level 2. It's a bit unorthodox, but it's really a configuration that we think can work well. It's given adjacencies with the special education elements of PT, OT, and blanking on the terminology, but a gym space for the special ed program. There are health classrooms up here, and the culinary arts. So those all have relationships to one another, and they form, again, another cluster that makes a lot of sense in terms of those programs being close together. Adaptive PE was the term I was blanking on. Sorry about that. The red space in the center is the media center. You can see how it touches at the very center of the academic wings. So it's easily accessed. It can be either for a quick research task at the very front of it, or it can be a hangout. There are multiple different spaces within it, a maker space, group study rooms, which we think with its adjacency to the dining commons can be really animating of the center of the school. I will try to accelerate things here a little bit. Level 3 has a similar layout. In the center of these layouts also is a teacher planning space. So the classrooms will be shared by different disciplines, different teachers. And so that's a bit of a new model. We have a place where teachers go. They can share ideas. They have touchdown space. They have a kitchenette area. And again, have a place where monitoring of activities in the hallway can happen from the center. We've made efforts to open up the ends of corridors and try to get a lot of light coming in at the edges so that we really illuminate the center of the building, because it is quite a dense arrangement of space. As we move to looking at how the building is sort of forming in 3 dimensions, here's a view from the northwest looking over Farm Street. Hemlock Road is coming down on the right here, and the new intersection off the page to the right. So that's the basic massing. We've been asked, what does that look like from across the field on Farm Street? So we're building on the current Beasley Oval. The oval in the foreground is being constructed after the building in place of the existing school after that gets demolished. The field is down about 4 feet from where we're standing, and then the front of the building is down, say, another 4 feet. So we thought it was important to have the building feel like it's connected to the ground. There's a linear element, this sort of, it's a sort of a watercourse band that expresses the ground floor. a little bit separately from the upper floors, but it gives the sense of a weight and a grounding of the building. And we can see the media center even from this far distance. A closer up view of the school kind of is where we see the materiality. It's a primarily brick masonry building that we've imagined and are having cost estimates that are reflective of these materials. There are some metal panel accents. Again, that banding in a precast concrete material, which probably won't be as contrasted to the brick, but should be sort of visible and legible. And then at the base, granite for its durability, very, sort of long-lasting. It's one material we don't have to kind of worry about its durability. And it's fairly affordable relative to alternatives. More detail at the front of the building. Again, we're again expressing here the end of a corridor with projection out and trying to create some break of the sort of planarity and flatness of potentially what the wall could be. And on the sort of rear side of the building, which is more south-facing, a more horizontal expression, which has some awning elements. They're kind of louvered awnings that create shade on the glazing elements. You can see the shadow and how that can be really effective of keeping direct sunlight off the glass. The materials, we're going for a 25% window-to-wall ratio, which is in line with our building performance targets in terms of achieving a net zero ready facility, which encompasses other elements, but also the window elements are going to be triple glazed, and the solid elements will be backed up with a quite robust insulated wall. Super insulation, you could even call it. A few elements here, images of the interior, the main dining common space. These are very much in progress and being reviewed this week with the exterior and interior focus group. And so we'll get feedback on these this week, but we sort of like the direction of, sort of animating the ceiling with some kind of openings, whether there's natural light coming in or artificial as sort of a coffer. We think this, can enliven the space, but we also want to have a sense of calm here because of all the activity. We don't want to really overburden it with too much going on visually. The media center is one of the few spaces that will have carpet. There's a floating ceiling that relates to the exterior gesture out the front of the school, which is what you're seeing straight ahead. There are, again, a multitude of different seating opportunities and differentiation of different environments for different types of learners. And a view sort of looking back, and on the right you can see the view into the dining common space. We've got multiple elements here. My sense is this will calm down maybe a little bit in terms of the overall expression, but we really want to try to imagine the best space possible. Though the brunt of the material palette is fairly commonplace for a school, we will look for a terrazzo floor in the main dining common space. Most of the rest of the flooring is going to be linoleum. Most of the walls are painted gypboard. We will have acoustic lay-in tile ceilings, maybe some wood millwork elements, and we'll reserve the colorful elements for painted surfaces that can be potentially modified in the future. Otherwise, it's a fairly neutral palette and long wearing. We do have high goals for sustainability. Again, zero net energy ready, which does rely on a contribution for rooftop solar, and we've coordinated closely with the utility on the idea of the energy park. a super insulated envelope, all electric, mechanical systems, and high efficiency. And many other. We did our focus on sustainability in the last meeting, so I'll sort of just leave it there, and this slide will be distributed. And with that, I'll hand it over to you, Lynn.
Okay, I know there's been a lot of discussion about reimbursement and also what eligible costs are. As Brian said earlier, we are in the process of estimating what you've seen here tonight. We hope to wrap up. We have 3 estimators that are estimating the project. We hope to get estimates in by the end of the day on Friday. We have a reconciliation process with the 3 estimators and all of the teams you see here, engineers and architects, looking at the estimates and trying to come to a reconciled costs that we can put together into a total project budget and present to the town for approval. Our base rate with MSBA is the 49.94%. We anticipate getting incentive points. We don't have a firm number on the estimate for good maintenance. There's a max of 2%, and right now we're using a conservative number of 1.5. We should be getting that this week or early next week from MSBA, and we do expect to get the 2% for energy efficiency, over 20% over the Mass Energy Code. This would bring us up to a reimbursement rate of eligible cost of 53.44%. And I want to hold on this effective reimbursement rate for a minute. As you can see, it's about half of what our calculated reimbursement rate is, and the next couple of slides should explain that. Once we get a base reimbursement rate from MSBA, in order to kind of spread the money around the Commonwealth, they apply caps to all of the costs. So there's a site cap. Anything over 8% of the building costs is 100% on the town. Also, other items that are considered ineligible and 100% on the town are any off-site work, such as the roundabout, for example, or the relocation of Hemlock Road. We have a construction cap of $360 a square foot of eligible space, and again, we'll talk about that in a minute. But anything above and beyond the $360 a square foot is on the town. All spaces within the building that are deemed ineligible are also 100% cost on the town. We have a soft cost cap construction of 20% of construction costs. The soft costs are things such as fees, FF&E, technology, anything loose inside the building per se, and also some of the other some of the other budgets that we have in order to enable the project, such as moving any swing space, that sort of thing. We have that's all considered soft costs. We have a cap on the designer fees of 10% of $500 a square foot. Anything above that is 100% on the town, as well as the OPM has a fee cap of 3.5% of the $500 per square foot. In terms of FF&E, which is furniture, fixtures, and equipment, the things inside the building, there is a cap of $1,200 per student, and the same for technology. It has the same cap as FF&E. Then we have a category of spaces that are considered categorically ineligible by MSBA, meaning no matter what reason you have for them, they're not going to participate in reimbursement on them. And these are such spaces that, things like moving, anything over 1% of contingency use, gyms over 18,000 square feet, any overages in the non-academic but supportive academic spaces, such as theater and performing arts, and any town-specific spaces. The MSBA has a minimum space guideline that we work toward. It's not intended that you build to those minimum space guidelines. Basically, it's the minimum space that a school should have. I personally don't know of any school that's been built to the minimum space guidelines, but this is just to ensure that everybody is getting the same across the board in terms of what MSBA will reimburse on. Most schools are built they all are built to their specific educational program. Therefore, there are going to be specific spaces to a school that is unique to that school, and MSBA, doesn't participate in those. We do think that we're going to have about 28,403 square feet above the 195,000 that MSBA will consider likely academic exemptions. They do make exceptions to academic spaces that may exceed their guidelines if we can prove a need for them. So we should be able to achieve those reimbursement on that additional square footage, but we do know that we have at least 35,624 square feet of ineligible space that they will not participate in. And that's based out of our total square footage for the building of 260,027 square feet. Next. Because of the spaces that we know are going to be ineligible, we have decided to break them out so that we can determine what the cost of them are, so that we'll know what they are based on the estimates that come back. We'll have a separate cost for all of these spaces. But all of these spaces are unique to Wakefield High School in that they've been programmed into the educational program, and we do need them to be larger than the minimum guidelines that MSBA has provided. Some of these or most of all of these equal spaces that you currently have in the high school. We're not creating new types of spaces, we're just providing space that already exists for the educational program that exists today. Some of these are like the WCAT studio, we're demolishing the building, so we have to replace it, as well as district offices. So we will break out these costs so that we know the spaces that will be 100% on the town. We have also other site elements that are either off-site or beyond what MSBA will contribute to that we'll also look at too. A big one is the Hemlock Road realignment and intersection design. Next. Just to give you a little bit about where we are in the schedule, we're just about at the end of the feasibility study schematic design schedule. We anticipate making a project notification to MSBA on October 13th. That's to inform them that we are indeed submitting for MSBA approval on the 27th of October, and to inform them in advance of what our budget intends to be. We will make that submission at the end of October in anticipation of MSBA Board of Directors putting us on the agenda for approval on December 21st, 2022. Right now, we're also targeting January 2023 for a special town vote on the project. Next. These are a few important timelines or milestones that are coming up. As I said before, the cost estimating process is anticipated to wrap up by the September 30th. Tonight's public forum, as well as we have a few more programming meetings that we're wrapping up this week as well. We have our cost reconciliation on the 3rd, and on October 6th, we'll be presenting the budget to the PBC. So hopefully you'll all join us that night as we walk through the budget. We will be presenting at a Wakefield Town Day on October 8th, so come out to talk to us and see some of the latest renderings on the project. And we anticipate making our notification to MSBA and putting out a draft schematic design submission on October 13th for people to take a look at prior to the public forum on the 18th of October. And we'll be asking the PBC to vote to submit the schematic design on October 20th. One other important meeting is the Traffic Advisory Committee. It's coming a little late for us, but we do need to have that meeting, and this is sort of coordinating with the Metro Tech project as well as getting more insight from the town on what's going to happen with the relocation of Hemlock Road and the intersection. And again, the submission of schematic design will be October 27th. Next. And then a peek at what we anticipate the overall schedule to be. With a positive vote from MSBA on the 21st of December and a positive vote from the town, we'll start the design development and construction documents process. We have about a 13 to 15 month time frame on that. However, we will be starting with some early packages, hopefully as early as next summer, 2023. We do have our CM on board, Bond Building, and they are also one of the estimators that will be estimating the project. It's been very helpful to have them on board to help us with scheduling and estimating, as well as some of the logistics involved with the project. We anticipate, again, like I said, starting some enabling work next summer and ramping up to a full construction start in the spring of 2024, with completion of the new building in time for September 2026 school opening, at which point we'll start the demolition of the existing building and the replacement of Beasley Oval, with a full project completion in the summer of 2027. One other thing I wanted to mention was on the milestone dates. Last week we did have a presentation, and it is available on our project website. We had Jason Tate from the Mass Office of Campaign and Finance have a discussion with us about what we can and can't do in terms of advocacy of the project. Basically any elected, appointed officials or any agents of the town, we can only present facts. We cannot advocate for the project at all. And if you want to learn a little bit more about that, again, we have it posted on the project website, and you can download it or listen to it. And I think
We have a link to the YouTube channel for WCAT, which has the full presentation from Mr. Tate.
Thank you. I forgot to mention that under the milestone dates. That concludes our presentation, and we'd like to take questions now. Sure.
Evening, Mike Scolo here. So thank you for hosting this forum tonight. Very informative, and it's great to see the project evolve. So I do have a few questions. One, the roadway improvements, are they included in the project cost?
Yes, they are.
Okay. And then two, on parking, parking is a chronically or just habitually a challenge. Will we continue to have the same capacity parking with the new school as we have today, if not more? I would assume more would be desirable. and eliminate off-street parking, but I'm just kind of curious about that.
Sure, yeah, so I'll speak to the parking. We are providing an expanded parking program on site. Currently, there's 269 striped spaces around the school. That doesn't include any spaces along Farm Street or Hemlock or at Landrigan Field. The proposed parking program, 330 spaces. So that represents,
Okay.
60 additional spaces. I know parking is a topic that everyone gets excited about. And so we hear the need for more parking, and we're doing the best we can to accommodate it on site, and then also expanding existing facilities at Landrigan.
Excellent, that's good to hear.
Yep.
And then I think there's some confusion around auditorium. So the auditorium that's included, that's a little bit different than the current black box theater, correct? What's the capacity on that?
It's much different, actually. Typically, MSBA allows 2/3 of the total the student population to be the seating capacity of the auditorium, and that's what we'll have, 667
Okay.
seats. It'll be a very highly functioning theater, similar to what's at the Galvin School, and so, that was something that was impressed upon us as we went through the process. That there will be rising, high schoolers who will, be accustomed to having a great facility, and they should have another great facility when they come up to the high school level. Full functioning proscenium theater with fly tower, and all of the stagecraft elements that will be a great resource for, sort of teaching all of those disciplines. So it'll be a great hands-on learning tool.
Excellent. And just to confirm, that's the only auditorium in the building, correct? There's not going to be two, or I think there might be some
That's
confusing
correct.
information out there.
It's the only sort of formal theater in the school, although there will be quite a few potential informal performance spaces. For example, that learning stair in the dining commons space, that can be a informal amphitheater. There will be outdoor spaces where performance can happen as well. Even hallways, we're trying to make sort of expanded areas as hallway commons areas, where maybe like practice of Shakespeare could happen, or things like that, or meetings of modest-sized groups. So we're thinking about that element kind of propagating maybe throughout the school, but not being a formal element.
Excellent. Well, the design looks very impressive. Thank you for all the hard work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
When somebody has a hand up, Jonathan Giants?
Go ahead.
Thank you, Joe, and thank you everyone for the presentation. It was really helpful to see all of the detail and all of the information you were able to share, and it's great to see the design starting to take shape. It's very exciting. I was wondering, Lynn, if you could just step back to the financial analysis, particularly around the $360 cap on construction costs that the MSBA allows. Can you talk a little bit about what kind of impact that has, particularly as we think about the difference between our sort of gross reimbursement rate and the effective reimbursement rate as you laid it out?
I think that if we go back to that slide, that's why I said I wanted to come back and revisit what the next one, the effective reimbursement rate was. Once you apply all of these caps to the project costs, we end up with an effective reimbursement of 26.16, which is about half of what MSBA indicates our reimbursement rate is. And I think back in April, when we did our public forum in April, we actually applied the cost of where we were at preferred schematic report to that formula, and it ended up being about 163 I really don't want to speak out of turn because I can't remember the numbers, but it was maybe you know, it's this 26.16% difference between what the town would pay versus what MSBA reimburses for. Again, we didn't want to show those numbers again because that was from estimating that occurred back when the project was in conceptual design and not nearly as far along as we are today without nearly the knowledge that we have today. But also, you know, a lot has changed from March, April timeframe to now, you know, in terms of the bid market.
Yep. No, certainly I understand that. I guess the reason I'm asking the question is knowing that we still are going through the cost estimating, I'm assuming that wherever we end up, the construction costs, just given where the market is, are going to be a lot higher than the 360. And so I guess I just wanted to understand from a relativity standpoint, you know, as we think about the ineligible spaces, as we think about this cap, do we have a sense as to what's the relative effect of both of those things on the net reimbursement rate that we're expecting?
I don't anticipate seeing a lot of difference. You mean in terms of the difference between the 26.16 reimbursement rate versus what it'll end up being after this exercise, estimating exercise?
No, I guess I'm asking as we think about that construction cost cap, you know, does that account for most of the drop from the gross reimbursement rate down to the effective rate? You know, is it the, you know, non-reimbursable spaces that account for most of the drop? Do we have a sense as to how sort of those different factors play out in terms of the MSBA's reimbursement?
I think the biggest factors to that ending up with the effective reimbursement rate is the cap and the ineligible spaces. I would say both of those are large factors in the drop.
Okay, thank you.
And we will spell out exactly what for each of those categories next time when we have the new cost. What relate, you know, how much of it the town is paying based on those two categories.
Great, thank you.
Macaulay?
Good evening. I have a couple of questions.
Excuse me?
I'm curious how can you hear me?
Yeah, Joe, Joe, can you hear me?
Yes.
Excuse the interruption. This is Doug Lyons. We just have someone in studio. Maybe after Ms. McCauley speaks, we could have
sure.
someone in studio
No
speak.
problem.
Thanks.
Hi, good evening. I'm curious a couple of things. How will this project coincide or possibly collide with the Vogue project? And also, where will the high school students be during this time?
So throughout the project, the high school students will remain in the existing building until the new building is complete. We have already started to have meetings with the Metro Tech team. We plan to meet with them monthly as the project continues on into design development, and as they get into construction, they're a little bit ahead of us. We know there'll be a lot of logistical issues that we'll have to deal with as the project goes forward, but again, we're starting that coordination process with them early, and we intend to make it work. I mean, we are not affecting the existing school until the new one's built. It'll be much like the Galvin Middle School project, where school was in session in the existing building until we had the academic wing completed. We moved the students over, and then we completed the rest of the project. But it won't even be as disruptive as it was with Galvin, because we moved the Galvin students in when construction was only halfway done. So they'll be moving, the high school students will stay in the existing building till the full building is complete, and they'll move into a fully functional high school. Does that answer your question? Okay.
Is he frozen? Hi, Marie Olivera, old school. Some of my questions have been answered. In particular, living on Nahan Street, I have major anxiety about both of these projects occurring at the same time. So I'm hoping all those issues around congestion, trucks up and down, and all of that will be discussed at a future meeting.
Yes, we'll continue those coordination and logistical meetings as we ramp up to construction. We're hoping that they have their new access road in place further down Farm Street and can use that road for all of their construction, trucking and deliveries so that it stays away from the high school. But we don't know that yet, but we will continue to work with them to try to come up with the best solution in terms of that. We certainly don't want Hemlock Road to be, we want to keep congestion off of that as much as possible.
And I wasn't able to tell from the diagrams, that green space behind the track, is that all going to be wiped out? You were talking about grading and all of that, because there's some beautiful green space back there, and I would hate to lose that.
That's the hill up to Landrigan?
Yes.
So, but I think the question is in regard to the behind the construction.
Yeah,
correct?
Yeah, behind the track.
Yes, so
The high school
it's-
will be there. Then you have the parking lot that sits behind that.
We're trying to find some images there to talk to.
So-
Yeah, go to the site. I
Site
think
plan.
go to the site plan.
Yeah. Do you want to take this?
Sure. So there are some, there is a wetland buffer that is
Yes.
right behind there. And so our intention is to avoid the buffer and to keep as much as the vegetation between the property line and our project intact. And so that is, I, as a landscape architect, love plants, love to see mature vegetation. And so it is our intent to keep as much as possible. And so
I was going to add, part of what we are charged with on this project is making all places accessible. And so we are going to be proposing and building accessible access from the quieter spaces of the school up to Landrigan Field and up to the parking that we're going to be expanding on. So that will be kind of carved through that landscape as well.
Okay. So there'll be some green space.
Yes,
in
absolutely.
Point to the area on the map
Great.
there.
And I know the item mentioned that at this point, the expense to the taxpayer would be an additional $1,000 a year on our taxes. Is that still something that looks like will happen? Particularly asking whether or not you've factored into this cost inflation.
Well, that cost was based on the cost estimating that we did back in April. We will be updating that with this next round of estimating, but also if you go to our project website, we do have a calculator, so you can enter the value of your home, and it'll tell you exactly what your tax rate would, or tax increase would be.
Okay.
And hopefully, once we get the new budget in there, it should be,
A little clearer.
it should be accurate for you
Okay.
for the rest of the project.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Somebody on Zoom, Mike Perlman.
Next is Mike Perlman.
Hi, thanks. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, I'm curious, the new high school design is bridging many gaps due to the changes in learning and methods, since it was built, right? And I expect this building, the new building, will be in use for 50 years or more. So I'm curious, are there, do there exist or is there a way of like best estimates of sort of future long-term potential directions in teaching methodologies and building needs, 20 plus years out, or it could go in a lot of different directions, but is that sort of analysis taken into account in the current design, and I guess some of the flexibility to meet potential future changes in the educational needs?
It is. I think that's a great question because, again, it puts the educational mission in focus. What we try to do is really design for flexibility, as you suggested. We take our best, sort of examples of what's happening out there in the world, and there are some very, sort of progressive districts and schools out there that we look at, we pay attention to. And our leader through the visioning process kind of brought those to the fore. So for every district, there's a different sort of gradation of how progressive things sort of are can be sort of on the horizon. And so right now this facility, it could be occupied in a very departmental centric way, sort of the older way that, or, for a lot of districts, the current way that, humanities is over here and science is over here, and the two are not really mixed very much. And we had some really robust discussions about that, showing science classrooms on two different legs of the building. And so that's a forward-looking approach, I think, in terms of the adjacencies of each of the pods, that you can surround those with really any other program. And you can teach any program in virtually any space within the building. What we don't have is sort of the original additions to the school had some very open plan type arrangements, and those had to be closed in later on. But looking at the next 50 years, this is our best projection of where we think things are headed, which is very student-centered, very student-directed and project-based. And if you read through the educational plan, it's got really Dr. Lyons and his the district really contributed a ton to that, and again, it's the basis for everything we're doing with the design. I don't know if Dr. Lyons, you want to add to that at all?
Yeah, I think Brian summarized it beautifully. I think one of the key components in constructing a new school is flexibility for the future, right? And square footage and interchanging, being able to interchange spaces and join spaces, right? So as a department may join together, right, or two departments may join together to do common work, or students might join together in those spaces. Where those departments are located and where those rooms are located are key. And I think the design allows for that currently, but also in the future as well. I also think that MSBA requires us to do a 10-year look and a forecasting for enrollment. So in terms of growth of the community, I think we've done a pretty good job in that space, estimating the growth and looking at the number of students that will be participating in learning in this building. So I think that's the only pieces that I think I would add. With the exception of that, I think the educational plan was exceptionally done, both with the guidance of our architectural firm and the leaders in that space, and helping us kind of envisioning, but also I think that the teacher leaders and administrators at the high school did a very effective job in creating the educational plan that is represented in the building that you see here today.
And I guess the sort of a follow-up, well, really two connected. So does that forward-looking, flexibility extend to predictions technologically as well? I guess just an example that comes to mind is the houses in our cul-de-sac were built about 20 years ago. Right. Our next door neighbor wanted to add additions when it was being built to enable possible, technology. And at the time, that was running these giant bundles of Cat5 wires all throughout the house. 10 to 15 years later, people didn't see broadband Wi-Fi in the house taking over, such that you would never need to run those wires and have these holes with everything. But it's sort of that foresight of what you might find in technology, because you couldn't run those wires if the Wi-Fi didn't come by. You couldn't really run those wires after the fact. So in sort of in that vein, technology-wise, in addition to the spaces, is that also taken into account what might be, 10, 20 years forward?
It is to some degree. Technology is something that we can put technology there, but people have to use it, right? And they have to be comfortable using it. And I think that's an issue generally with this topic, that we need to strike a balance. Also, we have a fairly limited budget, and as you saw, the MSBA has a cap on technology. We would love to put more, for example, touchscreen technology throughout the school, but if you weigh that versus potentially distributing Chromebooks, or what else are you going to weigh that against? So it's sort of a limited source of funding, and again, there's good technology out there. The best we can really do right now is to enable with wireless Wi-Fi connectivity throughout the facility, to make sure we have a lot of charging stations, which we have not only in common space but in classrooms as well, for handheld devices, for the Chromebooks, putting those in places where the students are going to congregate, at the same time being mindful of plug loads, and not overburdening the school with devices plugged in everywhere. Those can be put on timers now and switches, so that there are limits to sort of the hours those are available. So it's all about balance, I think.
I would also add, I'm sorry for interrupting you. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. I said one last little piece.
No, I think I would just add, one of the questions that you didn't ask specifically was, I think there's going to be greater accessibility on the part of students to technology throughout the entire building, whereas that's a significant limitation with us at this point, right? And so that's one of the things you're going to see. And so there's a lot to talk about in this project. And so, but I appreciate your questions.
Okay. Can I, last little quick one, sort of in the same vein. Assuming nobody really planned for a pandemic and what that meant from extended period of attending from home, hybrids, and all those different models. Thinking sort of all along that time frame of the last couple of years of that must change what builders are doing, in terms of office space, schools included. And I'm curious, has that changed or been taken into account of sort of this new, unexpected, dramatic change that, with the flexibility piece that I think you were talking to before?
Yeah, I think the connectivity that you were talking about before with technology is one, enabling a little bit more of a hybrid mode, though that's not what we're really projecting as sort of the baseline. Definitely the development of outdoor space, that can be teaching space, I think, and our site team, I'm sure, would have a lot to say about that as something that we are noticing is more appreciated now, I think, with the idea that you can take classes outside and be productive out there as well as inside, pending the weather.
There's also significant improvements in the mechanical systems.
Yeah.
More air changes, better filtration, more availability of natural ventilation, that sort of thing.
Oh, great. Well, thanks for taking my questions, and keep up the good work. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next there were a couple of questions on the chat, and there's two other people with their hands up. Well, first ask the questions on the chat. The designs are in the early stages. What type of barrier will surround the new Beasley Oval to protect it from traffic on Farm Street and Hemlock, the proposed rotary, etc.? Thanks.
Protection against the construction. There'll be a construction fence up.
No, it's the barrier surrounding the new Beasley Oval.
Oh, after build. Go ahead.
Yeah, we have fencing proposed at the outer limits of the track, and then we also have ball netting to control balls to keep them from going into the streets as well.
Similar to the Galvin Middle School.
The second question on the chat is how will the sound coming from the gym be handled?
There is a chat option.
Sound coming from the gym.
Inside the building.
So I think
I assume it's talking about it from down below.
In contrast to what we had as a scheme very early on, I think we were showing even the district offices below the gym, which was not ideal by any means. So we've actually moved all the sound sensitive space out from under the gym. So we've got other phys ed space down there. We've got locker rooms, we've got storage, restrooms. So we've removed that adjacency pretty substantially. In terms of to the exterior, the position of the gym toward the Oval and Farm Street side of the project means that we see the possibility of very little noise migrating to the nearby neighborhood over to the east.
Okay, Dominic Millette has a hand up. Dominic?
Thank you. Yes, I'm a fairly new Wakefield resident, so this is the first meeting I am attending, so maybe I missed that information before, and I'm sorry if I did, but I would like to know a little bit more about the cafeteria. So is this a full cafeteria? Like, will we be able to make meals there, or will we be able to teach, I don't know, cooking, or have cooking class, or that kind of thing, for maybe in the future have better health, better food in our school, not just in Wakefield, but in general.
Yes, those are great questions. There's a full cooking kitchen, and servery, which are on the screen now. The areas in gray toward the center are just off to the right of the cafeteria space. And we call it dining commons. Its main sort of function during the daytime is to serve lunches, and there are other, I believe breakfast and other snacks that are available there. But that's the main seating area in the center. So those gray areas to the right are where there's, again, a full kitchen, where there's cooking done, and on the second level, directly above, there's a culinary arts program. So the orange square to just below the gym is culinary arts, and there is both theory space and hands-on space for learning cooking. And it's adjacent to the health classrooms, so nutrition is an obvious kind of shared teaching element there. Between those two elements, that's where kind of the hub of the cooking elements are there. There are other possibilities that this extends even to the outdoors. So the common space that is sort of between the two halves of the building, you know, that could become garden space and could help serve the kitchen. You know, if you know, the directors and staff feel that that's what they want to do with that space. So that's really the environment of you know, all things food right in the center.
Okay, so there's going to be ovens and things to cook food on site.
Yes, ovens, grills,
Okay.
You name it.
Okay, that's awesome. Thank you. I also my question.
It will all
was,
be all electric, though. I'll add that that
Okay.
the energy source for the kitchen will also be all electric, along with the rest of the building. So this is a big aspect of sustainability, is electrification of all the systems, and so that's a big hurdle that we've crossed with this project.
Okay, yeah, that's great to know, because I also see on the sustainability slide that you have that you're gonna have electric roof, electric panel, solar panel on the roof.
The roof will be ready to receive solar panels, so all the infrastructure will be in place with the construction of the building. And then there is very likely to be an arrangement with the utility for them to install the panels in the future. And that will be a major source of energy for the school. And it will contribute to the energy park that's being envisioned that will serve both the high school and the Voc.
And when do you think like those panels could be installed?
That's.
We don't know.
It's hard to say. I mean, that's.
We don't know that
okay. Okay, I have like two short questions actually, and I want to thank you because the question about the sound below the gym, that was my question. So thank you for answering. And then the next question is, are you planning to have a charging station for electric vehicle on the parking site?
Yes, we are.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Stefan Chase.
Hi there, good evening. Thank you for all your efforts in putting the presentation together and all your hard work. A few questions. One, I believe this was talked about a little bit earlier, but can you speak to the current student body population size and the growth projections taken into consideration in the current school design?
Yes, we're a little over 900 at this point. And so the construction and working with MSBA, the building is being designed for 1,000. And there also is a growth factor of, I believe, 15% on top of that 1,000. So 1,150 would be the capacity of the building per the MSBA. There is also, I think the architects would add, there's also some flexibility in space if we were to grow beyond that point. But in the 10-year projection, we're supposed to be pretty stable in that area. So I hope I answered your question. If I didn't, please let me know.
You also
perfect.
You also have a relatively low class size, students per classroom. So that's another area to be flexible with as well.
So that's a great segue into my next question. I was curious if you could also speak to the average class size today at the high school versus what it would be at the completion of the project.
Sure. Our current class sizes range by department from about 18 to 22, which is really the range that we would like to be in. And so that's where we are currently. And we're anticipating after we complete the project to be around 19 to 23. And so again, that will vary by department.
Okay, and are there any aspects of the design that would allow the school to support a larger student body growth during its lifetime?
So based on the information I just provided, if we're at 930, there is a growth factor of, we're designing for 1,000. The growth factor beyond that from MSBA is 1,150. So I thought that I covered that earlier. Is that not clear? Or are you thinking beyond 1,150?
Yeah, beyond 1150.
So there would be, if, for example, there were other kind of measures we needed to take. I think Lynn touched on that. It might affect class size. But I do think we could absorb students, a small number of students beyond that. But that's where we are at this point in time in terms of our design and our planning.
One last question that I had, I know there is concern, or at least it was brought up earlier regarding the tax implications or increased implications for the residents of the town of Wakefield. I was curious if there's any aspects of the current design of the school that might provide the town of Wakefield with some sort of competitive differentiation from surrounding or similar comparable communities that might increase the attractiveness of the town of Wakefield, potentially supporting our real estate valuations.
That's one thing that we want to address at our next meeting is the value of a new school on the real estate market within the town. We're kind of waiting to see where our project ends up in terms of cost so that we can kind of talk a little bit more specifically about that. But it does, a new high school does affect the value of real estate in a community. And we can show examples and references to that, but we will show that in our next forum.
Well, thank you so much.
Martin Sander.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm sorry. Both my kids attended the existing school, graduated like 10 years ago, and I can confirm that the whole concept of flow for the students was the number one concern, number one complaint for the years that they went there. So the plans I'm seeing here that you guys are displaying is fantastic. It's a real paradigm shift. One area that I either missed or I'd like to hear a little more about is the library space. I know with technology, physical books are less important, but personal and informal study spaces are more interesting, I think.
Sure. I wonder if WCAT can help me zoom in on that area. The mouse here is not quite working. So we have the plan view here, which I know there we go, a little bit better. So it's a highly differentiated.
It's not displaying.
Okay.
Sorry, it's not displaying yet.
Are we sharing the image? Can you see the presentation at all?
There it is.
Okay,
now
great.
I can, yes.
Hopefully that's a little better. So the idea of the media center, which is what we tend to call it, is that it truly is home for multiple different media, but also including books. Books are really not going anywhere for a while, but there are definitely other media technologies that would be useful here. There'd be multiple computer stations, audio, video, sort of all the sort of media that people are consuming generally are here as resources. And there are enclosed group study spaces, which are on the upper portion of the plan to the left, so enclosed, but also a little bit glassy, so it feels really open. So those will be perfect for small groups of students to go in and tackle a subject together, brainstorm. There are multiple uses for that space. There's a maker space that will support the production of presentations and potentially visual support of student projects. Fairly low tech. There may be a laser cutter, but more of sort of working with paper and crafts within that space. And that's a space that we've been asked again, to replicate the space that's currently in the media center library that we're migrating over of the same size. So that's in the lower right corner of the red space.
We're replicating with windows, something important to note, not a small thing. So I also would add, and something that's important to note for the community that might be viewing tonight, that this part of our educational plan in terms of the library media space was cited by the MSBA. They were in touch with us and had asked if they could use this section of our educational plan as an exemplar for other districts that might be constructing a high school. So they have taken what we've created as to the model that we would like to build, and they have asked if they could use that as an exemplar for other districts that are in this space. And it's featured in this module, in this section on the MSBA site. And the writer in that space is, obviously our high school administrators, but the principal writer is Diana Ho, our current library media specialist, who's pretty extraordinary. So I think that this space is going to be a hub for the school, and it will continue to be a space where students spend quite a bit of time. I hope that's helpful.
Absolutely fascinating. I love it. My last really quick one is I'm convinced that good education, a big part of it is happy teachers. Do they have decent spaces? I'm just remembering visiting a guidance counselor and had to crawl into a little cubbyhole to talk to him.
Yes, those cubby holes still exist, and in the new construction, they will not. And so there will be a student support area that's going to look very different. And so that's one of the things that we are looking forward to most in the new construction.
Awesome. All very positive, very exciting. Thank you.
Certainly.
There's also a question on chat here, considering Martin's question, thinking about flow within the building. How many stairwells connect the first, second, and third floor?
So the stairwells are shown in yellow here. On the academic side, there are 3 main stairwells that connect all 3 levels. There's one also at the media center that is shared with the gym. That one is sort of connecting the 2 sides. And then there are 2 additional on the north end of the gym. Again, because the gym is such a large space, it requires more exits out of it. We are planning for over 1,200 people to potentially occupy that space. There's also the learning stair in the very center of the project, which will also be used as one of those means of egress from the gym going down. So seven stairwells in total, 3 of them connecting 3 levels of the building, and the other 4 connecting 2 levels.
Can I add to that? So Brian, can you talk about a question that we often get in correlation to this, as well as the number of elevators and accessibility?
Sure. So the facility will be completely handicap accessible, complying with both federal and state guidelines that we must follow in every new project. We do have 2 elevators serving the project. One passenger elevator connecting the 3 levels of the academic wing, and a second elevator, a larger elevator, more of a freight elevator, if you will, but also able to take passengers. We've just oversized it because there are fairly large pieces of equipment and instruments and such that need to go up and down to the gym and back. So between those 2 elements, there are 2 locations that help to connect every level of the project and make them fully accessible. Beyond that, again, we're complying with all of the guidelines which dictate the nature of surfaces, projections from walls, reach limits. So it will be a thoroughly accessible building throughout the project.
Okay, there's one other thing Thomas Butcher answered, and I appreciate this. Thomas, he gave an answer to the question regarding solar. The Wakefield Municipal Gas and Light Department plans on installing solar panels after the completion of constructions and students moving in, estimating in 2028. And we got that in writing, so we're gonna, make sure that they do that.
Joe, I did get one more question.
All right.
And this may end up needing to be for our sustainability expert, but I'll put it to the team. On the sustainability slide, it notes embodied carbon reduction. How are we planning on achieving the goal? And the second part was exactly on the solar panels, but the first is related to the carbon reduction piece. Do we need Martine for this one?
I think we'll need Martine to go into the deeper dive on that item.
All right, we will get back to you, Robin Greenberg. Thank you.
Are there any other questions? I don't see any more. On behalf of the Permanent Building Committee, I thank everyone for viewing tonight. There will be another public forum on October
18th.
18th, thank you. I couldn't remember 17th or 18th. In which we will have some of the numbers in on the estimators. And obviously we'll be talking about that, and you'll be seeing references to it in the paper, I'm sure, in the upcoming weeks. And I'd like to thank the panel I'd like to thank SMMA for being here tonight, and the school department, and of course, Lynn and Tim for being here from left field. So thank you all for viewing. Have a good night.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, thank you.
Thank you.
You're good, thank you.